Susan Dey was America's sweetheart on the Partridge Family. Millions watched her every week, but behind her smile was a terrible secret. At just 19, she weighed only 92 pounds. She ate nothing but carrots. Her skin turned orange. Then something happened with David Cassidy that broke her forever. In 1994, he betrayed her in the worst way possible. Today, at 72, Susan lives completely alone on a farm. She hasn't spoken to Hollywood in 20 years. What drove her away will shock you. She was born on December 10, 1952, in the small city of Pekin, Illinois, a quiet place with just around 30,000 people, surrounded by cornfields and old railroad tracks. Pekin's slow pace and strong sense of tradition shaped her early years, but even then, something inside her was already looking for more. At just 5 years old, she stepped onto a tiny church stage to recite a poem about family. The applause was soft but sincere, and her father leaned over and whispered that she'd be on a real stage someday. That moment stuck. She didn't know it then, but a seed had been planted. Her father, Robert Day, ran the local newspaper and filled the house with stories about deadlines, editors, and things happening far beyond their zip code. Her mother, Ruth, was a registered nurse who worked long shifts and came home with stories from the hospital that were full of compassion and quiet strength. Their home wasn't fancy. Shared rooms, hand-me-downs, and a lot of budgeting, but there was something more important: curiosity, love, and encouragement. Susan and her sister Leslie would flip through Hollywood magazines from the public library, circling faces like Audrey Hepburn's and imagining what life might look like on the other side of the camera. But everything changed in 1961 when Susan was just 8 years old. Her mother, Ruth, died suddenly from pneumonia. One day she was there, and the next she was gone. There was no time to prepare. The house got quieter. Susan, still in elementary school, had to grow up almost overnight. She helped look after her younger siblings and tried to stay strong while holding on to her dreams. That loss never fully left her. It shaped her silence, her guarded nature, her strength. It made her look at the world differently. She never spoke about it much, but that grief sat with her for years. A year later, everything shifted again. Her father remarried a woman named Gail. Unlike the stereotype of a strict stepmother, Gail brought something else entirely. She saw Susan's quiet beauty and poise, and when Susan turned 12, Gail began encouraging her to take part in more family photos. It wasn't just to fill albums. She had something bigger in mind. In 1968, after reading an article in 17 magazine, Gail took a chance. She submitted photos of Susan and Leslie to the Eileen Ford Agency in New York. Both girls were signed. Susan was 15. Leslie was 13. That one envelope changed everything. The same year, the family moved from Illinois to Thornwood, New York. Her father had taken an editorial position at the Standard Star in New Rochelle, and the change of pace was jarring. Gone were the cornfields. In their place were school buses, chain stores, and new accents that didn't quite match hers. At Columbus Elementary, and later Fox Lane High School, Susan kept to herself. Her 5'7" frame made her stand out, and kids teased her for her Midwestern accent. But she worked on it. She practiced speech exercises until her voice blended in. She joined drama club, tried out for school plays, and stepped into the role of a munchkin in a school production of The Wizard of Oz. It wasn't Broadway, but it was the beginning of something. By the end of 1968, modeling had gone from possibility to reality. Susan started appearing in 17 magazine spreads, her face fresh and natural, exactly what advertisers were looking for. She booked a CoverGirl ad. She walked for Pauline Trigère during New York Fashion Week in wool suits that draped around her like armor. She was only 15. The lights were bright. The compliments were strange. She heard things like "too clean" or "needs more edge." At an age when most girls were still figuring themselves out, Susan was being told how to look, what to weigh, and how to smile. But her first major break came in a very unexpected way. In 1966, she was hired for the cover of a Perset's booklet called Getting to Know Yourself, a small publication meant to teach girls about menstruation. It was considered taboo. Girls didn't talk about those things publicly, but there was Susan, just 15, on the cover. She was paid $50 for the shoot, which felt like a fortune. That job, though small, made a strange kind of noise. Her face landed in thousands of girls' hands across the country. It wasn't fame yet, but it was exposure, and it showed she had something brands wanted. As the jobs picked up, Susan and Leslie shared a small Manhattan apartment. They booked catalog gigs together, sometimes modeling for Sears and earning $200 a day, which was a lot in the late 1960s. But being in the same agency created tension. The comparisons were constant. Who booked more jobs? Who looked better in photos? Who got more attention? Modeling stopped being just exciting. It started to feel like survival. They were weighed, measured, and photographed every week. Susan kept her waist at 24 inches because that was the industry's standard. That pressure crept into her mind. She started skipping meals. She looked perfect in photos, but it came at a price. In 1969, something unexpected happened again. Susan booked a JCPenney back-to-school campaign. It was a classroom setup. Desk, chalkboard, lockers. She wore preppy outfits and held notebooks, but something about her look caught the attention of television casting directors. It wasn't just how she looked. It was the way she carried herself. There was something real about her, something familiar. They wanted that. They wanted her. That ad opened the next door. She was just 17 when she stepped into the spotlight. No acting credits, no formal training, not even a clear idea of what a close-up was. Susan Day had only been modeling a few months when her agent pushed her toward a little audition for a new family sitcom. Over 300 girls wanted the part. Producers were looking for a teenage daughter who looked innocent, sounded honest, and felt like she belonged in a suburban dream. Susan walked in, wide-eyed and quiet. She walked out with a 7-year contract and a $1,000 per episode deal. That was early 1970. She didn't even finish high school. She packed her bags, left New York, and flew to Los Angeles to shoot the pilot. When the Partridge Family aired on September 25, 1970, it pulled 16 million viewers. The girl no one knew was suddenly on every screen in America. Lorie Partridge was supposed to be just another TV teen, but Susan's calm intensity made her real. By the end of the first season, she was getting over 8,000 fan letters a week. Teen boys sent poetry. Grown men proposed marriage. Girls copied her hair. Reporters lined up to talk to her, but only if she stayed clean and quiet. Her team told her to smile, give G-rated answers, and never step outside the image. Everything was managed. Every word, every outfit, every smile. Behind all that, Susan was crumbling. She stopped eating. Her weight dropped to 92 pounds. She was afraid to be seen, afraid to be too thin, too moody, too real. The world only wanted her when she was perfect. That pressure ate away at everything underneath, and nobody outside the set knew. Inside the studio, it wasn't always much better. Danny Bonaduce, her younger co-star, was wild. During one table read, he hid her script pages just to watch her panic. Susan sat frozen at the table, eyes darting, trying not to cry. She was still learning to act, still unsure of every step. A producer eventually stepped in, gave her private vocal coaching, and helped her find footing behind the microphone. Singing and acting and being watched by millions every week. It wasn't a teenage dream, it was a tightrope, and Susan was walking it without a net. Then came the bass guitar, Season 2. A few episodes called for Lorie to jam with the band. They could have faked it. Most shows did. But producer Bob Claver insisted on authenticity. He brought in Jerry Goldstein, a sharp studio musician, to drill Susan for 4 hours a day. Blisters formed on her fingertips. Her hands hurt constantly, but she showed up every day. The camera caught those little details, how her fingers pressed down, how her body swayed, and fans noticed. Critics called it one of the most believable music scenes in teen television. She never boasted about it, but those practice sessions were a quiet war, and she won it. She wasn't just acting on her show anymore. In 1971, she crossed over into The Odd Couple, a late-night shoot in the alleys of Hollywood. Her scene was with Jack Klugman, a giant in television. She was exhausted, sleep-deprived, still shooting Partridge Family by day. But when cameras rolled, she slipped into character, flirted back, and held her own. Jerry Paris, the director, was stunned by her timing. The whole crew watched her work the moment like she'd done it for years. Klugman later said she was sharper than most adult actors. That one scene gave her something she hadn't had before: respect. By 1972, her pay had doubled to $2,000 per episode. She bought a modest place in Encino, but the success came with a price. Filming went on 5 days a week, 14 hours a day. No weekends, no dances, no graduation. She had to hire a private tutor just to get her GED. Lessons happened in limos, in trailers, in tiny windows of time between takes. She missed prom, missed summer, missed being 18. That house in Encino wasn't a teenage paradise. It was a box with lines to memorize, scripts to read, and cameras outside. Then came the episode that changed everything: The Last of Howard. It aired in February 1972. The plot was simple. Lorie falls for someone who doesn't feel the same. But Susan didn't just act it. She felt it. The pain in her voice, the silence in her eyes. Critics said she went from teenage stiffness to raw emotion overnight. Emmy buzz started building. Trade papers predicted a nomination for Best Supporting Actress. The show's ratings jumped. The Partridge Family hit number 20 across the country. Adults who had written her off as just another pretty face suddenly saw her differently. She wasn't just playing Lorie anymore. She was Lorie. The Emmys that year brought another wave of tension. She arrived on the red carpet with David Cassidy. Fans screamed, cameras flashed. Their pose looked innocent, but gossip magazines printed it like a love story. Headlines suggested romance. Rumors exploded. Off-screen, Susan wasn't just trying to smile for the cameras. She was trying to hold herself together. She had feelings for David, but the network had made it clear: keep it clean. Keep it sibling-like. Keep the illusion alive. She walked that carpet like everything was fine. But inside, she felt trapped. The girl who gave up everything to be on TV couldn't even own her own emotions. The world wanted Lorie Partridge. And every time Susan tried to be someone else, the walls closed in. In 1972, Susan Day was just 19, already famous as Lorie Partridge on The Partridge Family, and already drowning under the spotlight. The world adored her smile, but behind it was a quiet war with her own body. Obsessed with looking like Twiggy, she began eating nothing but carrots and drinking water. That wasn't a metaphor. That was her entire diet. Her weight plummeted to 92 pounds, dangerously thin for someone who stood 5'7". It reached a point where her skin turned orange from all the beta-carotene, and people noticed. During Season 3 fittings, the wardrobe team struggled to hide her sharp frame under loose blouses. But it wasn't enough. The network intervened, quietly ordering that her costumes be padded to hide what the camera couldn't unsee. What they couldn't hide was the truth. This wasn't just about fashion, it was about a girl crumbling under the pressure to stay perfect in a world that punished her for being human. By 1973, things got worse. During a beach cast party, Danny Bonaduce, the mischievous redhead who played her on-screen brother, mocked her right in front of everyone. He looked at her in a bikini and said she looked disgusting and skeletal. It wasn't a joke. It was a wound. Public, sharp, humiliating. That comment didn't leave her mind. She didn't cry. She didn't fight. But that night changed something. That night made her face the mirror differently. That night made her whisper to herself that maybe she needed help. Quietly, she started therapy. Silently, she began the first steps to heal, though she told no one. Not the press, not the producers, just the small circle that mattered. One of those people was Shirley Jones. In January 1973, Susan fainted during filming of The Last Chance. Shirley, who played her mother on TV, stepped in like a real one. Susan finally opened up. She told Shirley what no one else knew, that she couldn't eat, that she was scared, that she didn't know how to stop. Shirley didn't panic. She didn't make a scene. She quietly arranged for Susan to meet a nutritionist, privately, secretly. They called the visits acting prep to keep producers and tabloids away. No headlines, no drama, just quiet care in a world that offered very little of it. Those meetings saved Susan. They didn't fix everything, but they opened a door. 2 months later, in March 1973, they shot an episode called The Odd Trip. In it, Lorie Partridge looked exhausted, almost ghost-like. Behind the scenes, producers reviewed the footage and were alarmed. Her pulse was barely 50 beats per minute. That wasn't just exhaustion, that was medical danger. They gave her a 2-week break. No questions, no filming, just rest. She disappeared from the set, quietly slipping away to try and mend what was broken. It was the first time the production machine paused for her, and she used that pause to breathe again. But healing didn't mean happiness. In Hawaii, during a location shoot, something else broke. Susan had been in love with David Cassidy for years. It was no secret among the cast. She kept it quiet, but everyone knew. One evening after a read-through, standing by the water as the sun went down, she finally told him. She told David she had feelings, that she saw him as more than a friend. He listened, then softly said no. He told her she was just a friend, nothing more. No malice, no cruelty, just finality. But that didn't make it hurt less. That night became another crack in the mirror. The sunset, the ocean, the closeness of that moment. It all made the rejection feel bigger than it was. She was 21, he was 23, and it was over before it ever began. A year later, in 1974, after the show ended, they met again at a reunion party in Los Angeles. They talked, shared memories, laughed. That night, they slept together. For Susan, it felt like something real, a shift. Maybe this was the beginning of what she had always hoped for. But for David, it was something else. He later told friends he did it out of pity, because he knew she still carried those feelings. He said he was confused why she still liked him, that he had always seen her like a sister. That confession didn't stay private. It made the rounds in Hollywood circles. And when Susan found out, she was crushed, humiliated, betrayed. It wasn't just the night that was taken from her. It was the story she had told herself for years, and now it was twisted into something small and pitiful. She never spoke to him about it again. 20 years later, in 1994, David Cassidy published a memoir, Come On, Get Happy. In it, he told the world about that night with Susan. He called her naive, said she was eager. he turned their one private moment into a public anecdote. Susan read the book, and she was sick, not just emotionally, physically. Her hands trembled. She told a friend that it felt like he had stolen her story, twisted it, sold it. From that moment on, she refused to appear in any reunion. No more interviews, no more nostalgia. David was erased from her life completely. That was her line. That was her last word on it. Back in 1973, there had been an episode called Heartbreaker. In it, Lorie Partridge pines for someone who doesn't love her back. It aired just months after the Hawaii rejection. Watching it now feels cruel. The story wasn't fiction. It was her life, rewritten for laughs. Off camera, David would casually talk about groupies in front of her, not knowing, or maybe not caring, how much it stung. Shirley Jones once warned Susan to stay away from him, told her he was unattainable, that he would never settle down. But at 21, those words didn't land. Only the rejection did. And she had to act through it, smiling on screen, breaking inside. In 1994, the same year David's memoir came out, Susan was starring on L.A. Law. There was an episode that December called The Nut Before Christmas. Her character breaks down in a courtroom, tears flowing, voice cracking, rage surfacing. Critics called it one of her most powerful performances. Viewers said they could feel her pain through the screen. What they didn't know was that she wasn't acting. She had just finished reading David's memoir. The betrayal was fresh. The heartbreak was back. And for once, she didn't hide it. She let it pour out into the role. She was barely out of her teens when she found herself strapped into a real Boeing 707 with Charlton Heston just a few seats away. It was 1972, and Susan Dey had never been in a feature film before, but Skyjacked threw her straight into chaos. The hijacking thriller had real turbulence, real panic, and no escape. Some of the aerial scenes were filmed mid-flight, and what started as acting quickly became survival. One moment, she was a stewardess named Ellie Brewster. The next, she was gripping her seat through jolts so strong the crew had to halt filming. She later admitted that those shoots gave her a lifelong fear of flying. It wasn't stage danger. It was a confined sky metal tube shaking against her will. They even recreated a mid-air refueling sequence to add realism, and it worked too well. That first roll ripped her out of television safety and dropped her into a pressure cooker. But that pressure carved something new. The tension, the breakdowns, the tight focus on her face, it all revealed something studios hadn't seen before. She could act under fire. By 1977, nobody saw what was coming. In Mary Jane Harper Cried Last Night, Susan didn't play a heroine. She played Rowena Harper, a mother so broken that she abused her own child. It was a TV movie, but it didn't feel like one. In one scene, she violently shook the crib. In another, she held a pillow just a little too long over her daughter's face. The script was drawn from real abuse cases and psychological trauma reports. But for Susan, it was personal. She tapped into therapy sessions she'd attended about her own need for control. And it showed. The critics didn't just watch, they recoiled. She was no longer Lorie Partridge. She was someone far more complex. That performance earned her a People's Choice Award nomination, but more than that, it erased the sweetness that had once defined her. She had crossed a line, and she wasn't going back. Then came 1978, and the film First Love. She was nervous, but determined. Her nude shower scene with William Catt wasn't just about sex or shock. It was strategy. She knew what people thought of her. She also knew that to survive in Hollywood, she had to break the image before the image broke her. The film was based on a short story by Harold Brodkey, but all anyone talked about was that scene. Not long after, she was in Playboy, fully exposed. It sent a jolt through her fan base. She knew what she was doing. She said in interviews that the industry demanded perfection, but punished rebellion. That moment, more than any line of dialogue, was her statement. She was not going to be anyone's innocent anymore. That same year, she flew to Hawaii to guest star in Hawaii 5-0. One scene had her sprinting over coral, handling a prop gun, diving for cover. She slipped. Her ankle caught the reef edge and twisted hard. A sprain, a production delay, a brace. It should have been a problem. Instead, it became another proof of her shift. She wasn't there to sing, smile, or play safe. She was willing to bleed for roles if she had to. The episode, Number One with a Bullet, became one of the most talked about guest spots of that year. Her injury, oddly, helped make it real. Then, in 1981 came Looker. Michael Crichton's sci-fi thriller needed a model who could be digitized and destroyed by light. That model was Susan. The computer-generated scenes made her the first photorealistic CGI woman in cinema history. But behind the scenes, the tech gave her migraines. Literally. The flashing lights used in filming were so intense that she'd sit in the dark after takes with cold cloths over her eyes. Still, she didn't back down. She used the press junkets to talk about what modeling and Hollywood had done to women, how beauty had become a prison made of pixels. She became one of the earliest mainstream voices to speak out about industry distortion. The role left scars, but also marked her as more than just a star. She was a voice. When L.A. Law debuted on September 15, 1986, something changed. Grace Van Owen appeared in a courtroom, and suddenly Susan wasn't playing someone damaged or victimized. She was the sharpest mind in the room. That first cross-examination scene shocked viewers. Creator Steven Bochco said she had steely intellect. What no one saw was that she had gone through 20 callbacks before winning the role. Her past was forgotten. Nobody saw Lorie Partridge anymore. They saw a lawyer with bite. That single episode launched the show into orbit, and Susan into Emmy conversations. On January 23, 1988, she stood on stage at the Beverly Hilton holding a Golden Globe for Best Actress in a Drama Series. She thanked her co-star Harry Hamlin for opening her heart, and rumors exploded. She thanked her daughter Sarah for surviving the long nights. She joked about once winning a turkey in a store raffle. Then she got serious. That speech became a landmark. The cameras captured something real. She wasn't just an actress winning a trophy. She was a mother, a woman, and someone finally recognized for everything she'd carried. On February 12, 1987, the Becker on the Rocks episode aired. It was part comedy, part chaos. Her courtroom banter drew from her Partridge Family days, and it worked. Ratings crossed 25 million. That episode changed how legal dramas were written. She wasn't just playing a lawyer, she had become the face of the genre. Between 1987 and 1989, Susan was nominated 3 straight times for a Primetime Emmy. One episode about surrogacy struck close to home. She had fertility issues of her own. In 1990, a miscarriage storyline was added at her request. Viewers felt it. The pain wasn't acted, it was lived. On May 19, 1994, L.A. Law aired its final episode. It was called Abby My Love. Susan's character ran for judge. She gave one final speech. It was filmed in a single take. One breath, one shot, one goodbye. At the time, she was earning $4 million per season, one of TV's highest-paid stars. But money didn't matter. Burnout had arrived. The spotlight was burning too hot. She stepped away. Not because she failed, because she'd given it everything. In 1995, she did something wild. A Lifetime movie called Deadly Love. She played a vampire photographer who killed men and seduced cops. It was adapted from Love Bites and had one scene where she drained a man's blood after he tried to rape her. It was camp. Critics panned it. But for Susan, it was one last swing at something strange. Her fans didn't know it yet, but this was the end. Behind the cameras, her life was already cracking. Alcohol had crept in during the 1980s. By the 1990s, it was a full-blown fight. She found sobriety in 1992 through Alcoholics Anonymous. She celebrated 1 year sober with a small cake at a meeting. Someone leaked it. Then, in 1994, a tabloid informant infiltrated her group. Her private recovery became national gossip. That same year, David Cassidy published a memoir exposing details of their past relationship. That betrayal, combined with the AA violation, broke her trust in the public. She vanished quietly, firmly. Her last role came in 2004. Third Watch, 2 episodes. She played Dr. Breen, helping trauma victims after 9/11. On set, she mentored younger actors. She directed her own scenes. And then, she walked away for good. But she didn't disappear entirely. In 2000, she joined the UCLA Rape Treatment Center's board. In 2002, she co-narrated a documentary called Campus Rape with Corbin Bernsen. Her role on LA Law had changed how people talked about assault. Now, she was doing the work for real. She never made it about herself. She never wanted a comeback. By 2025, Susan Day was 72. She lived on a 25-acre farm in Andes, New York, with her husband Bernard Sofronsky, whom she married in 1988. Her net worth was around $10 million. She mentored a few aspiring actors through quiet email exchanges. She focused on her daughter Sarah. She never returned to Hollywood, never needed to. She had already done more than most, and she had survived it.